Welcome to Top Stories Hub. Today we've got a new story, one choice that changes everything. Are you ready? I wasn't just some nobody back in the day, I was a somebody, a real player. I'm the guy who scratched and clawed his way up, building a whole business empire from zilch, every buck I made coming from grit and a sharp game plan. People used to tip their hats to me, and yeah, they were a little spooked by how driven and successful I was. But now, I'm parked at this jam-packed Christmas dinner at my wife's parents' place, and man, it feels like all that juice I had has been yanked away, leaving me as this sad sack guest in a setup that just spits on what I used to be. The harsh, icy bite of old regrets swirls around with the zesty smell of turkey roasting in the oven, and every little clink of those fancy champagne glasses drags me back to when folks said my name with a nod of awe. Right across the table, there's my wife, Emily, who used to look at me with stars in her eyes, totally impressed. Tonight, though, she's got this snarky little smirk that hits me harder than any jab ever could. Her mom, Linda, is running the show in this nasty little play we're all stuck in. She's got a voice that could wake the dead, cutting through the quiet as she cackles over her glass of wine, tossing out, "Can you believe we actually thought you were some money wizard?" Her words just float there, heavy, and then the whole room busts up laughing. Even Emily's quiet chuckles slice into me like a cold blade. Under the table, my fist tightens up, knuckles going white as I fight to keep my cool and not blow a gasket. My jaws clamped shut, teeth grinding, but I'm keeping my mouth shut on purpose. I've figured out that talking can be like swinging a bat, and tonight, I'm using silence as my armor. In just 10 minutes, my lawyer's gonna roll up with a letter that could flip this whole mess upside down, a piece of paper that's got the power to put me back on top. My brain's spinning, flashing back to who I used to be, the dude who started with nothing and built a company brick by brick, tackling every hurdle with guts and hustle. I can still picture those late nights hunched over spreadsheets and blueprints, the endless hours that shaped my wins, and the hardcore pride I carried in every call I made. These days, though, I'm weighed down by every screw-up and backstab that landed me here. I'm sitting with my wife's family like some washed-up king, my throne swept away in a flood of giggles and sneers. Every grin aimed my way screams that they think I've lost it all, everything I ever cared about. What they don't catch, though, is the fire still smoldering deep in my gut. I suck in a slow breath, trying to get a grip on my head and my heart, while a little voice inside keeps muttering that this is just a breather before I unleash hell. Every bit of this night's carving itself into my brain, peace, the mean glint in Linda's eyes, the tiny twist in Emily's face, the cocky shine in the eyes of folks who used to look up to me. Right then, it hits me, this crash isn't the end, it's the start of me settling some scores. I'm staring at the candles flickering on the table, picturing them as the last scraps of a life that got ripped out from under me. But way down inside, I know my fight's not gone. I've been through the ringer before and come out tougher. There's this steady buzz of grit growing in me as I tick off the minutes, till my lawyer, my ace in the hole, shows up in his sharp suit. Every click of the clock's like a drumbeat, pumping up my will to take back my life and my pride. Tonight, I'm sitting here looking like a guy who's down for the count, but I'm secretly gearing up to climb back up. All the snickers and jabs flying around are just stoking this slow, hot rage inside me, promising some sweet payback that's coming whether they like it or not. I'm not letting this embarrassment define me. I've got the guts from my old wins in my bones, the strength from all I've pulled off, and I'm damn sure this big flop is just the warm-up for my big comeback. Even in this low spot, there's a flicker of something bright, and that flicker tells me the fight's nowhere near done. I'm keeping it cool, my quiet louder than any comeback I could throw out, waiting for that second when the letter, the one that's gonna shake everything up, lands in front of me. In that still, electric moment, I'm making a quiet promise to myself that this ain't the end of my tale, it's just flipping to a fresh page where I'm gonna stand tall again, not as some has been, but as a champ rising from the wreckage of my own tumble. 3 months back, my whole world flipped upside down in one gut-punching morning. I woke up feeling like a ton of bricks was sitting on my chest, my head spinning with this dark vibe like something unseen had ripped my soul apart. The news that slammed into me was worse than any bad dream I'd ever had. They hit me with a lawsuit, pinned me with fraud, and said a board vote was coming fast, one set up to yank the CEO gig I'd busted my ass to get. I just sat there, stunned, my heart racing like crazy, trying to wrap my head around how all I'd built over years could fall apart in a snap. Every piece of my rock-solid empire, put together with late nights and pure stubbornness, looked like it was about to turn to dust. Pretty quick, I clocked that this mess wasn't some fluke. Somebody had set me up on purpose. In the hush that came after, while I dug into the details with this sick feeling growing, one name popped out of the shadows in my mind: Jake, Emily's brother. He's the type who's always happy to hang back, stewing in this quiet jealousy. His own money gig never got off the ground past average, and he got some sick kick out of seeing my name splashed in the papers and my rep taking hits. I didn't have hard proof yet, but every gut feeling and hushed hint pointed straight at him. That sneaky spite of his had blown up into a full-on scheme, and I was trapped in its jaws. Even with all this chaos swirling, I was holding out hope that Emily, the one I'd trusted more than anybody, would have my back. I figured what we had was tough enough to handle any double-cross. But instead, I saw this cold wall in her eyes, some distant vibe that screamed secret deals and stuff she wasn't telling me. When I needed her most, all I got were weak excuses, leaving me stranded in this mess of backstabbing. That lonely ache hit harder when I realized the one person I thought I could count on had checked out on me. The real kicker, though, landed out of nowhere one quiet afternoon when I was holed up in a dark corner of the house. I ducked in there to sort out my head, to find some kind of calm in the storm. That's when I overheard Emily whispering with her sister, Sarah. Their little chat, supposed to stay under wraps, hit my ears and smashed what was left of my hope. I caught every cold word. "Good thing he's not lording over us anymore," Emily muttered, her tone so final it froze me solid. Sarah's laugh came next, sharp and mean, sealing the betrayal. "Bet he'll be scraping by for the mortgage soon," she tossed out, her voice dripping with poison. Every word locked in my worst nightmares, each one hammering shut the lid on what we used to have. For what felt like an eternity, I stood there like a statue, totally floored by the sting of their double-crossing. It hit me hard that Emily, my own wife, had picked an easy life and safety over sticking by me with love and trust. Man, that hurt worse than any cash I'd ever lost. In that split second where time seemed to stop, I got it: going at her right then would have been dumb and pointless. So, I decided to play it smart, hold off, and figure out my next step with a cool head. I couldn't let my feelings run the show. If I was gonna save what was left of my dignity and good name, I needed a solid, no-nonsense plan. As I started pulling myself together, this mix of rage and sadness churned inside me, turning into a quiet, rock-hard will to push back. I swore to myself that this gut-wrenching betrayal, as brutal as it was, wasn't gonna break me down for good. I'd dig up the proof, unmask the snake, and take back the life and respect I'd damn well earned. The roots of revenge were planted right then, and even in that bleak moment, I could just barely make out a light at the end of the tunnel, a shot at standing tall again. Every snide comment, every sneaky little whisper, just added fuel to this fire in me to hit back and bring my legacy back from the brink. I walked away from that gut punch of a moment, my chest heavy, fully aware the path ahead was gonna be a long, rough ride full of risks, but also carrying this tiny hope of making things right in the end. I'm slumped at Linda's big, fancy dining table, circled by folks who used to be jealous of my wins but now can't get enough of watching me crash and burn. The room's got this soft glow from candles and a cozy fireplace flicker, but that warmth feels miles away from the cold loneliness wrapping around me. The smell of turkey and bold spices hangs in the air, mixing with faint holiday tunes that do a lousy job covering up the nasty little digs floating around. I ease back in my chair, letting my eyes roam over the room, catching every sneer and smug grin aimed my way. Their stares drill into me, a quiet jab at how far I've tumbled from the guy I used to be. Jake's over there, lifting his glass with this over-the-top flair, smirking as he toasts, "Here's to fresh starts," his voice oozing with mockery while he locks eyes with me. I sneak a peek at my watch, 5 minutes left, till the moment I've been holding out for. The tension's thick as mud, but I'm not giving them the thrill of seeing me crack. I stay quiet, letting the ripple of his toast and the chuckles that trail it wash over me like a wave that won't quit. Linda, always ready to twist the knife, leans in and pokes at me. Come on, say something, huh? It's just family ribbing, nobody's saying you're flat broke, are they? Her words might sound playful, but they slice through me like broken glass. Emily, who used to gaze at me with soft eyes, now snickers into her wine, her laugh a mean little echo to the pain tearing me up inside. I wrestle to keep it together, shoving down the blazing anger and heavy letdown under a mask of calm. My gaze lands on Uncle Tom, the one guy not jumping on this mean-spirited bandwagon. He shoots me a look that's part curious, part kind, a quick lifeline in this ocean of spite. For a second, I almost feel that old family vibe, but it gets swallowed fast by the sour taste that's taken over this night. The table's like a stage for some dark play, every cheap shot and snotty look align in this script tearing me down. I think back to how pumped I used to be, starting my business from scratch, every win proof of my hustle and backbone. Sitting here now, those old highs feel more like a load on my shoulders than something to brag about. Every clink of a glass, every loud burst of laughter, hammers home that my old clout's just a faded memory. Deep down, though, I know I haven't lost it all, even with this non-stop flood of put-downs and jabs. There's this little spark of grit flickering in me, a hushed vow that this low point ain't the finish line, just a shadowy lead-up to me bouncing back. Time creeps by, the heavy quiet broken now and then by a snarky comment. I push the sting of betrayal out of my head and zero in on the little stuff, my heart beating steady, the slow calm of my breaths, the willpower stitching itself tighter inside me. I keep telling myself every dig, every nasty little zinger they throw, is just more gas for the fire that's gonna put me back where I belong. Right here at this table, with all the taunts and cackling around me, I'm quietly setting up for a comeback that's gonna sneak up and hit hard. I'm ticking off the seconds, each one a move closer to grabbing my life back. My eyes don't give anything away, but inside, I'm already mapping out what's next. This pack of wolves might be chowing down on their mocking feast, but I've got a hunch the game's about to flip. Their scorn tastes bitter as hell right now, but that's the exact kick I need to keep going. I hang on to that idea while I wait, knowing every quiet tick is a step toward me standing up again, tougher and more fired up than ever. The doorbell cuts through the thick buzz of this lousy Christmas dinner like a grim warning bell. In that heartbeat, everything freezes. Every head snaps toward the door like something's pulling us all that way. My chest's thumping hard, a non-stop nudge that tonight's the night fate's gonna drop the hammer. The laughs and small talk fade out, swapped for this creepy hush that screams tension louder than anything else. I get up from my chair real slow, every move to the door steady and sure. My ears pick up everything, the faint swish of clothes, the clatter of forks ditched mid-mockery, even the clock's steady tick sounding louder, counting down to what I know's gonna change everything. I swing the door open, and there's Mr. Daniels, my lawyer, standing in the dim light, gripping a black folder tight. His face is blank, all business, hiding how huge this moment really is. I stood there for a second, letting the weight of Mr. Daniels showing up really hit me. I'd been swallowing all the shame and backstabbing thrown my way tonight without a peep, and now, finally, it was time to settle the score. Every nerve in me was buzzing, a wild mix of nerves and this gritty resolve pumping through me like wildfire. You could almost chew on the irony. Here I was, the guy they'd kicked down to nothing, standing right on the edge of getting my life back. I moved aside so Daniels could step in, watching him glide into the room with this calm, take-charge vibe, every move screaming he's got this. The low chatter that had been bouncing around hushed up quick, swapped out for this thick, waiting silence where you could feel everyone holding their breath. I swung back toward the dining room, catching the looks on my family's faces, part disbelief, part disgust. Linda's eyes, which used to shine with this cocky edge, were now squinting with doubt, while Emily's face was a mess of regret and freak-out. Even Jake, who'd been strutting around all smug earlier, looked shrunk down, his swagger traded for this twitchy unease. I marched back to the table with the same steady stride that had pulled me through a ton of fights before. That quiet that used to choke me was now my blank slate, ready for me to lay out the real story of my comeback. That black folder in Daniel's grip wasn't just papers, it was a hammer cooked up in the heat of all their double-crossing, set to smash apart the fake little world they'd built while dancing on my grave. This wave of payback started rising up in me, a slow burn that promised all the crap they'd done was about to get fixed. Every step I took had this rock-solid sureness, my pulse thumping out the endgame of this whole scene. When I got to the table, the air practically crackled with this heavy vibe. I could see it in their eyes, this quiet panic that the story they'd been so happy to spin was about to blow up in their faces. Daniel set the folder down on the table real slow, like he was kicking off the end for everyone who'd loved seeing me squirm. I parked myself at the head of the table, my eyes sliding over the faces that had been so damn sure I was finished. In that loaded quiet, the only noise was the clock ticking away, steady, cold, reminding us time doesn't care about anyone's feelings. All those judgy looks and snide remarks they'd thrown at me were pressing down hard, but in that pressure, I found the juice to take back what's mine. Tonight, when that clock hit 8, everything in my messed-up world lined up to scream change was coming. I wasn't the broken dude they'd been laughing at anymore, I was a guy teetering on the edge of making things right. Every tick brought me closer to a truth that had turned their giggles into nothing and their sneers into dust. In that tight, still moment, it clicked, all that junk in my past was just the opening act for the tough-as-nails future I was about to carve out. I plopped down at the head of the table, every snotty whisper and jab from this long, ugly night sitting heavy on me. The room, which used to ring with laughs and clinking glasses, was now locked in this edgy, waiting quiet as I reached slow into that black folder Daniels had slipped me a minute ago. My fingers shook just a bit as I pulled out the crisp sheet, its official stamp screaming back the power I used to throw around like it was nothing. Every pair of eyes was glued to me, their faces a jumble of nosiness, worry, and this sneaky little glee. I sucked in a big breath and started reading that paper out loud, the one that had flipped my whole life's path, and my voice came out firm, laced with this icy grit. Folks, I kicked off, I'm not standing here as the guy you thought you had pegged, I'm the one who got screwed over by a slick scheme to tank everything I've busted my ass for. My words just sat there in the air, every bit a loud middle finger to all the betrayal that had been eating away at this family. The letter laid out all the dirt we'd scraped together over months, a tight, detailed list of money moves, fake emails, and secret talks that fingered the real jerk who'd sent me crashing down. Every sentence was another spike in the coffin of the bullshit story they'd all bought into so easy. While I kept going, my head spun back to those endless nights hunched over papers, patching together the bits of a plot I never thought would come from my own blood. It spelled out how they'd messed with the book step by step, held hush-hush meetings in dark corners, and pulled off this stone-cold stab in the back from the one person I'd trusted without question. Every word I read knocked down another chunk of their lies, swapping it out with the hard truth that I didn't do a damn thing wrong in this mess of folks trying to ruin me. I flashed back to that first gut punch when I knew something was off, the little clues, the quiet chats, the quick side-eyes, and offhand digs that kept piling up day after day. It was like some ghost hand had been pulling every string, every backstab, to take me apart slow and steady. And now, right here in this room, the wall holding all those secrets was busting wide open. That letter wasn't just some piece of paper, it was a blade I'd sharpened with all my pain and stubbornness, my way of yelling I wasn't gonna shut up or get tossed out like trash. When I hit those last lines, you could feel the room shift. Those cocky looks from the ones who'd ragged on me started melting away, swapped for this slow realization they'd been in on it too. Even Linda's smug grin wobbled as the letter's cold facts sank in. I stopped for a beat, letting every word's weight settle over their shocked mugs. I knew this was gonna stick in our heads forever, a game changer that flipped everything. I stared right at Jake, his face pale as a ghost, then over at Emily, her eyes showing regret and second-guessing. The letter wrapped up with a truth so big it shut down any arguing. I'd never lost my CEO spot, and all that fraud noise was just a twisted setup, a mean, complicated trick to smoke out the real rat in the pack. I kept my cool, my voice steady and firm as I laid it out. This right here is the real deal, and starting now, you're all gonna see I'm still standing strong, ready to take back every damn thing that's mine. The quiet that hit after was thick, like you could cut it with a knife, only broken by the faint shuffle of papers and the slow, careful breathing of everyone there. Right then, this rush of payback hit me hard, a deep-down certainty that justice was finally swinging my way. That letter wasn't just proof, it was my lifeline, tossed out to me in the middle of all this backstabbing crap, a light to lead me back to the guts I used to have. I folded it up nice and neat, sliding it back into that black folder, and I could feel the whole game shifting. Tonight, surrounded by these two-faced wolves, I'd taken my first big swing at getting my pride back and piecing together the empire they'd tried to rip apart. I sat down again, shoulders back, chin up, not letting my eyes drift from their faces, each one now showing a mix of scared and sorry they couldn't hide. In that heavy silence, full of the vibe of payback coming, I made a quiet promise to myself that I was coming back, no question, rising tougher and smarter from the mess they'd made. The room got real still as Mr. Daniels cleared his throat, his tone even and chill. I could feel the tension wrapping tight around everyone like a rope pulling hard. He started laying out the dirt we'd dug up on the guy who'd almost tanked me, every word careful and sharp. "We've got rock-solid proof Jake was the one spilling company money secrets," he said, no wobble in his voice, leaving zero room to argue. Those words bounced around the room, my heart slamming in my chest as I replayed every shady look and sneaky move that now added up to one ugly truth. I watched Jake squirm in his seat, his face going white, that cocky front heat had melting into pure panic. Daniels kept going, cool as ice. He faked emails, slipped in bogus papers, and teamed up with our rivals to set up my client's fall. Every word cut clean through the lies that had been eating at me for months. I flicked my eyes around the table, catching the shock on the faces of folks who'd piled on my misery before. Even Linda's smug little grin was gone, wiped out as the full picture of the betrayal hit home. This wasn't just talk or rumors, it was a tight stack of proof, cold facts showing a stab in the back that had been right under our noses. When Daniels pulled out the hard copies, Jake's deals, emails, and tapped calls, this wave of "I told you so" washed over me. I spoke up, keeping my tone steady and sure. "Your keys to my company's cash got cut off 3 weeks back." The words rang out in that loaded quiet, proving Jake's grip on power was slipping away fast. I didn't stop there. "Your accounts. Frozen solid. That house you bought with my blood and sweat money. It's gone, seized up." My voice stayed level, but it had this frosty edge, the sound of a guy taking his fate back in his hands. Right then, the whole vibe flipped from their mean little party to a showdown where the truth was king. Jake's whiny comeback was shaky, and when he tried yelling, "That's bullshit," it got swallowed by the heavy weight of reality. I could see the guilt and fear carved into his face, every twitch showing a dude who'd misjudged what screwing me over would cost him. Every bit of proof we laid out was like a final gavel drop on who he really was. I felt this flood of feelings hit me, relief that the lid was off, a grim grin at seeing the rat cornered, and this ache for all the time I'd lost to their games. That betrayal had sliced deep, but now it was out there for everyone to gawk at. With each paper and recorded call we showed, I felt the old me waking up, a guy with backbone, muscle, and a fire that wouldn't quit. All that hard evidence proved how far I'd go to get my respect back and rebuild what they tried to trash. The air got thick with their quiet guilt, and even the ones who'd loved kicking me when I was down couldn't play dumb anymore. When Jake slumped back, his big talk swapped for shaky defeat, I took a slow look around, sizing it all up. I got it then, this wasn't just me winning a round, it was a fork in the road for all of us. I wasn't gonna let their lies and tricks pin me down anymore. Today, with every scrap of truth slapped out there plain as day, I grabbed my power back. This steady peace rolled over me as it sank in, justice might have taken its sweet time, but it was here. The cuts from their betrayal would heal up, replaced by the kind of strength only the real story can give you. In that thick, buzzing quiet, I made a silent deal with myself that the rough road ahead would end with me rebuilding my name and my whole damn life. The tight records, fake emails, and planted papers, all of it showed betrayal's got a price tag, and it was paid up now. Sitting there, circled by the ones who'd laughed at my fall, I felt this little spark of hope light up, a sign I'd climb back up, tougher and more locked in than ever. This moment, with the traitor's mask ripped off, was the end of their sneaky era and the kickoff to me getting mine back. Every beat of my heart sang out that I wasn't done, just gearing up for what's next, a life where fairness rules and my honors locked in tight. I stayed put as the last bits of truth rang out around the room, the sting of betrayal sinking into every corner of me. All their fake fronts were smashed, and now I could see who they really were, clear as day. Jake, his smug grin long gone, turned to Linda in a panic, begging, "Mom, say something, please," his voice breaking under all that shame. Linda, the bossy queen who'd ruled our family's messed up games, looked lost as hell now. Her eyes, once twinkling with mean fun at my expense, were cloudy with doubt and fear. She stumbled out, I didn't know," but her voice faded into this heavy quiet that yelled louder than anything I could have thrown at her. I couldn't let that slip by without dropping the real talk that had been buried under their lies too long. "Sure you didn't," I said, my voice soft but sharp enough to cut through the hush. "You were too caught up loving my crash to see who was really pulling the strings." My words just hung there, a hard slap reminding them their earlier laughs were worthless now against the cold truth. I turned slow to Emily, my chest tight seeing her shaky hands and wet eyes. "What about you?" I asked real quiet, digging into her face for any hint of the trust and love we used to share. She barely whispered, I didn't know," a weak dodge loaded with sorry and the slow click that she'd screwed me over too. I kept going, low and steady. "Didn't know, or just didn't give a damn?" That simple, heavy question stretched the seconds out as the room went dead quiet again. Right then, every old memory, the laughs, the secrets we'd shared, the late-night promises, came crashing down, busting up what little faith I had left. This wasn't just one big stab, it was a bunch of little choices, each one a nick that had bled out into a gash too big to patch. I thought back to nights when her touch felt warm and safe, now just a cold echo, like every hug was a sign of a love that had faded under greed and chasing status. The people around me, once close as family, had turned into this lineup of quiet accusers, all in on the secret plot that dragged me to this sour spot. Looking at their broken faces, I felt this blend of hurt and a solid drive kicking up in me. Yeah, they'd cracked me, but in those cracks, I was planting the start of my comeback. I saw it clear now, their downfall wasn't just their payback, it was the opening shot of me rising up. The room, thick with their regrets and guilt, turned into the spot for a quiet face-off. Every jab, every mean word they'd flung like it was nothing, got peeled back as the worst kind of betrayal. I spoke up again, my voice even in carrying this calm power that hid the chaos inside. "We've all had our roles in this mess," I said, "and there's no dodging the truth now." My words bounced around like the house itself was watching our whole damn collapse. In that loaded silence, it hit me, I'd lug the marks of this night around for a while, but I'd also haul the lessons it drilled into me. I wasn't gonna be shaped by their empty promises and cheap laughs that had tagged my drop anymore. I'd climb out of this wreck with a sharp focus and a reason, hammered out in the heat of their double-crossing. Every breath I took, I felt that while getting stronger, the push to grab my pride back and rebuild the life they tried to trash. The road ahead was gonna be long and full of bumps, but in this raw, real moment, I leaned into the hurt as the spark for my own restart. Their fall was done, and as their walls came down around me, I stepped up to a future I'd build myself, free from all their past lies. The quiet in that room was so heavy I could practically chew on it as Mr. Daniels picked up his cool, steady spiel again. Every word he dropped just lingered there, hitting me like a solid punch through the tangle of bullshit those backstabbers had spun. "We've handed all this proof over to the feds," he said, his voice ringing with this no-argument finality. Right then, the weight of what he was saying slammed into me, and the whole vibe shifted from edgy whispers to the setup for closing out this long, brutal mess. Jake's eyes bugged out with panic and dread, and I could see him starting to get how screwed he really was. His hands shook like crazy as he messed with his shirt, and even Linda's snarky little grin vanished, turning into pure shock. I jumped in then, my voice hard and steady. This is it, the last hit that makes things right for all the crap I've taken. No more playing around, no more lies. Every sneaky move, every fake pat on the back, every mean chuckle, it's all built up to right now. I stopped for a beat, letting the silence crank up the punch of what I'd said, feeling every heartbeat in the room stutter. That end-of-the-line tone echoed deep in me, like the storm of betrayal was finally getting scrubbed clean by the raw truth. The feds were about to step in, and Jake's dirty tricks weren't gonna hide behind anyone's quiet anymore. I locked eyes with Emily next, her gaze wide with pain and regret. "And Emily," I went on, soft but sharp enough to slice through the mess of feelings, "I found out about those divorce papers you had ready." A big gasp ripped through the room like a shockwave. Her face went pale as hell, that secret she'd kept tucked away blasting out into the open. It was the last, no-take-backs betrayal that smashed right into the heart of what we used to have. "You were just waiting for me to hit rock bottom, huh?" I said, each word landing heavy. "Biding your time, till I couldn't push back." Tears welled up in her eyes as she tried to stammer something out, but the truth had already cut way too deep. I slapped a signed paper down on the table, a big, bold sign of the choice I'd locked in. "I filed for divorce yesterday," I said, my voice cool and firm. "Merry Christmas." Those words hit hard, no mercy, bouncing around in the stunned hush that took over. It was like time froze, leaving everyone stuck in the mess they'd made. I didn't drop that final blow with rage, just this cold, clean precision that made it clear, this chapter was done. As Daniel's words kept ringing, the last bits of my old life fell apart right there. Jake shriveled up, that big shot pride he used to strut around with now just a shaky wreck. Even the ones who'd rooted for me to crash couldn't duck their shame anymore. In that electric second, it hit me, every double cross, every laugh, every quiet nod they'd given had dragged me to this big showdown. I felt this mix of hurt and relief, the sting of losing it all tangled up with the fierce kick of taking my power back. Right then, I knew justice, slow as it was, had finally rolled in. That last strike wasn't just a finish, it was a fresh start. I was damn sure I'd build something new from this wreckage, free of all their poison. The ugly truth, laid out for the ones who'd mocked me to see, was gonna be the rock I'd build my comeback on. As that silence stretched out and my words faded into the stillness, I took a big breath, steadying myself for whatever's next. With that final hit landed, I leaned into what's ahead, my heart toughened up by all this but still open to a shot at something new. The air flipped fast as Daniels kept talking, his voice now packed with this take-no-shit authority. "We've sent all this to the federal folks too," he laid out, every word slow and dead set. The room, already weighed down by old betrayals, seemed to tighten up under the crush of what was coming. Jake's hands, still jittery from the earlier bombshells, looked like they were grabbing at his soul as he clocked how deep he'd dug himself. His eyes flicked around the table, hunting for a way out, but there wasn't one. His screwed-up path was locked in by the clear trail of lies he'd strung us up with. I leaned in, my voice icy and locked in. "Jake, you're staring down a long fight in court, maybe even some jail time." It felt like a judge's hammer coming down, done and done. The little buzzes that used to fill the room died off into this grim quiet, just my even breathing and the far-off clock ticking away a doomed beat. I slid my eyes over to Emily, her face now a mask of shock and giving up. In that buzzing hush, I dropped the next chunk of bad news I'd been sitting on. "And Emily," I said, quiet but solid, "I know about those divorce papers you drew up." It crashed over the room like a damn wave. Gasps popped off everywhere, mixing with this thick gloom that swallowed up the party vibe from before. Her eyes, big with fear and sorry, locked with mine for a quick, gut-twisting second before she looked away, ashamed. "How'd you," she mumbled, barely loud enough over the sudden heavy quiet. I didn't let her finish, the pain and betrayal in her look already said it all. "Found M in your closet," I shot back, simple, each word a jab at what little trust we'd had left. "You were waiting to see if I'd totally tanked before you filed." The charge just sat there, a bitter proof of a love that had rotted out long before this last move. I dug deep into my grit and pulled out another signed paper, a mark of me taking my life back from their hijacking. I set it on the table with a slow, sure hand and said, "I filed for divorce yesterday. Merry Christmas." The room blew up in stunned gasps, the happy buzz from earlier swapped for the sharp, raw echo of what I'd said. Time slowed down right there, each tick a brutal reminder of how fast things can flip and how close betrayal can sting. Jake, his defiance long gone, just sank in his chair as his world fell apart. Linda's face, once all high and mighty laughs, twisted into regret and shock. I took in every face, feeling this deep sadness for the choices we couldn't undo that landed us here. Christmas had turned into this train wreck show, every smile I used to know now a stab of betrayal and lost respect. Sitting there, that signed paper glowing like a damn badge on the table, I got it, this last hit wasn't just payback, it was me grabbing my life back. Cutting those ties hurt like hell, but it shut the door on a part of my life full of fake fronts and busted promises. In the quiet after, with my words settling heavy over everyone, I felt this clear, free rush. The night, once loud with mean laughs and brush-offs, had turned into this furnace of truth, burning away the dark of their lies. I knew going forward, I wouldn't let their betrayals define me anymore. I'd grab onto this tough but needed change that last blow kicked off. Every tear, every busted bit of trust, was a step to building a life where loyalty and honor would call the shots again. So, in that loaded moment, I made a quiet promise to myself, I'd walk out of this mess head high, hell-bent on rebuilding from the ruins of a love that screwed me over and a life that got derailed, shaping a future where this night's lessons would steer me to a path built on real justice and respect, not loss. After that rough Christmas, the house felt wrapped in this thick, eerie quiet, like even the walls were bummed out over a family wrecked by double-crossing. I stood by myself at the head of the table, watching Mr. Daniels' crew haul Jake out. Each step he took rang out like the end of his dirty game, a pathetic exit that slammed the door on a time full of lies and cheap shots. His face, once cocky as hell, now drooped in quiet defeat as he shuffled down the hall, leaving this vibe of regret and payback he couldn't dodge. Right then, the air got heavy with the weight of stuff that had been a long time coming. Linda just sat there, still as a rock, her eyes blank and loaded with guilt, like she'd finally tasted the sourness of her own part in this mess. Even Emily, tears pooling in her eyes with apologies she couldn't spit out, stayed hush, her earlier giggles swapped for this deep, spooky sadness that screamed of trust gone south. A cold loneliness sank into me, but in the middle of this betrayal wreckage, I started feeling this weird freedom creeping in. The room, once a playground for nasty jabs, had turned into this grim hideout where everyone had to face up to what they'd done. Looking around, I got hit with flashes of a happy family crowding a warm table, now all messed up by the stink of deceit. I thought back to Uncle Mike's soft grin, that steady look in his eyes that had been my only lifeline in this storm of backstabbing. My chest felt heavy as I turned to him and tossed out, "How about dinner at my place next week?" His quick nod, short as it was, held a hint of a future free from all this poison, a shot at piecing real ties back together from the broken bits of what we used to share. When the door shut behind Jake, his absence hit me like a brick in the gut. I eased away from the table, every step slow and thought out, carrying the weight of every choice that had landed me here. I walked past chairs that used to hold laughs and family warmth, now just cold, quiet reminders of betrayal. The hallways rang with echoes of better days, times when folks cheered my wins and my hustle was something to brag about. Now, that whole life's base was wobbly, and I was stuck sorting through the leftovers of promises that didn't hold up. Outside, the night was brutal and chilly, matching how my heart felt. I stepped into the cold, the sharp air slicing through the foggy mix of anger and regret hanging on me. Every breath I pulled in carried this bittersweet drive, a stubborn push to yank my life back from the jerks who'd screwed me over. I knew the path ahead was gonna be a slog, full of ghosts from old screw-ups, but there was this clearness in being alone, a quiet promise I could rebuild what I'd lost. Kicking the mockers out didn't just cut off a shady past, it cracked open a door to a future I'd call the shots on. In that icy night's silence, heading toward a dawn I couldn't quite see, I felt the bite of being on my own and the glow of this fresh freedom. The sting of betrayal was carved into me, sure, but it wasn't gonna run my show anymore. I carried the hard-earned lessons from that grim Christmas, a nudge that real grit gets cooked up in tough times, and even when everyone bails, you can still find the guts to start over. With every step I took away from that cursed dinner's leftovers, I swore I'd patch up my trashed rep and the honesty of my life, dead set on making those past scars the base for a better, truer tomorrow. The morning after that wild Christmas, I woke up to a quiet that felt free but kinda sad too. My phone wouldn't quit buzzing, texts and missed calls from work buddies, old pals, even Emily, but I let him sit while I sipped my coffee slow, watching the sunrise paint a faint glow through the window. Outside, everything was still, like the world was catching its breath after the chaos that went down last night. In that peaceful second, I felt this spark of strength firing up inside me. The news was already blasting my story: Mason Tech CEO pulls through corporate ambush, outs traitor and Christmas betrayal, the family that got too cocky too fast. Those headlines, popping up in papers and online, were a loud shout that I wasn't the beatdown guy they thought I was. They were the kickoff to my comeback, a solid vow I'd take back every damn thing they'd snatched from me. I flashed back to those long, rough hours alone after the dinner. Every low blow had planted the seeds of a grit that was now blooming into pure determination. I could still hear the sting of Emily's hushed words, Linda's icy laugh, and Jake's freaked out, "No way," but instead of drowning in that, I'd scooped up every shred of proof, every tough lesson, and turned it into a weapon shining bright with the truth. I figured out the best payback wasn't smashing the ones who'd stabbed me in the back, it was climbing higher than them, turning their nastiness into the juice for my big comeback. I wandered through the empty halls of the home we used to share, each step bouncing with echoes of promises made and trashed. In the quiet gaps between my heartbeats, I started sketching out a new life, one I'd rebuild with some damn integrity and smarts. All that past junk, full of lies and betrayal, was gonna be my stepping stone, not my shackles. I remembered my granddad's old saying, a low-key heads up from when honor and toughness meant everything: keep an eye on the quiet ones, they're either watching your six or waiting to stick a knife in it. Now, gearing up for a future without all that deceit, I knew I'd only lean on folks who'd shown they've got my back for real. In that new alone time, I kicked off plans for my next play. The ditch and dump I'd felt last night was morphing into this fierce need to kickstart something fresh, a beginning where my wins would come from my own hustle, not the flaky nods of the clowns who'd ragged on me. Every call I skipped, every text I left hanging, was my quiet way of saying I wasn't their punching bag anymore, I was the guy building my own fate. As the day rolled on, the sour aftertaste of yesterday started fading into this sweet buzz of what's next. I caught my face in the mirror, not some dude haunted by shame anymore, but a guy who'd learned the ropes, toughed it out, and was ready to rebuild his empire from the rubble of their lies. The real revenge wasn't some fast payback hit, it was the slow, steady chase for a life pieced back together with truth and respect. So, with this calm grit and a heart finally loose from yesterday's bitterness, I jumped into tomorrow's challenge. I was set to flip every rotten memory into a boost toward a brighter, realer future, one where my wins would glow even stronger, forged in the heat of betrayal and coming out unbreakable. That's the end of today's adventure on Top Stories Hub. Please like, subscribe, and let me know what you think in the comments.